Hi there. Last week, House of the Dragon won the Saturn Award for the first time for Best Fantasy Series. Season 1 didn't win this, Season 2 did, and I've mentioned this in a prior video. But then a few days ago, George R.R. Martin made a new blog post to praise the series for its win. Even though we thought, aren't you fighting with the writers, not speaking with them, what does this imply? And we've been particularly debating this among the channel heads in private, like Preston, Carmine, Red Team Review, of what is going on behind the scenes. And I want to keep this video short. The point is, I'll go over it just to give you guys context, but even we have decided there's so little context we don't know what's going on. Exactly. Things seem to have cooled off a little, but just the futility of, from a short blog post, trying to read into it, you're just projecting onto it. So let's break this down. Well, actually, this started in a prior blog post I did make a video on going, is Martin walking back his House of the Dragon criticisms, when in another update talking about Dunk and Egg, he said, wow, it's a very faithful adaptation, parentheses, and as you all know, I am very, very reasonable about that. And the way he said it wasn't just, I'm a reasonable guy, I'd point, it sounded like he was being sarcastic and self-deprecating. And even then, we couldn't definitively say, and this is a whole thing where I jumped on to ask the question on one of Preston Jacobs' live streams, and he agreed. He read it off and said, I think this is him being self-deprecating, I think things have cooled down. Then Carmine came on and disagreed and said, no, this is him being completely honest. They made a private podcast, members only, for that. They said they were going to make another video about that, so they're busy, but they'll get to that, of what did Martin mean in his prior thing about, well, I'm reasonable about these adaptation issues. Even though it was something he said I was fighting with HBO most of spring of 2024, so who knows. And even then, if he was fighting, maybe it was over something that we would honestly think was an unreasonable look, because Condal and his writers have genuinely, I usually felt like they did things for reasons. What made me freak out about Benioff and Weiss was when I realized there are actual quotes where they're saying, wow, we're going to pander these actors and get awards and boost our own careers so they could jump off to do a movie career, versus a director who has a view you disagree with in an adaptation. I've compared this to Peter Jackson, that I never 100% agreed with him with everything he did in Lord of the Rings. I 90% agreed with him. But how reasonable is reasonable? It's hard to argue this without exact quotes, that we don't know what exactly the discussions were behind the scenes. They haven't told us yet about what exactly we've got little hints. Martin fired his warning shot, but he didn't say what the real problem was. And even then, Condal usually, as opposed to Benioff and Weiss, who were gaslighting us and, well, I did it because I felt like it, they would give structured answers of why they did things, so I don't know, and it is an interesting debate to have. I do think Season 3 will be a lot better paced, because, dude, that was the studio's fault with the writer's strike preventing things. I've talked about this elsewhere. But continuing this trend, that was just all recap. The new stuff is, we have now a second blog post, and it wasn't just a little piece of another one either, a blog post dedicated to praising House of the Dragon for winning a Saturn Award. When a lot of people that, for one reason or another, didn't even like Season 1, there are criticisms about Season 2, and I've said I acknowledge criticisms from measured sources like Voice of Old Town or Grease Goblins pointed out what I felt were structured criticisms versus, oh, there's too many women in charge. It's the same people who were irate that Season 1 was good and existed after Benioff and Weiss, or just, it's more than one reason. Different people with different criticisms just needed to tear something down, as well as reasonable criticism. And Red Team Review has also had his own videos going, there are reasonable criticisms, and then there are the crazy, why wasn't there a dragon battle in Episode 2? It was so slow, and Episode 2 of Season 2 is like one of the best they've ever made as a drama. So that others are remarked on just how weird our comment sections got, because I guess the algorithm is rewarding negative comments that really aren't as grounded. All of that aside, I really feel like while there were problems, the haters, the blind hype, this was boring, there wasn't a lot of tits and dragons in it type, latched onto and tried to co-opt the legitimate criticisms. And they don't care about, oh, there's these other characters who may or may not have been cut. They were like, Dragon Battle, over and over again. And they'd latch on to anything. So when Martin was complaining about, I'm kind of annoyed they cut something that we thought we wouldn't, without telling us what exactly, or if that's the only problem, in his Butterfly Effect blog post, they latched on to that as, see, even Martin absolutely hates it. That isn't what happened. That they've been having a wonderful time co-opting that, when Martin never fully washed his hands of the show. That I directly asked, when we were talking about this on the Westeros.org forums, Elio Garcia, who co-wrote The World of Ice and Fire with him, who heard things Martin said in private at Worldcon with that other author, he strongly pointed out in the forum, if Martin wanted to wash his hands of Ryan Condal and never work with him again, he wouldn't have bothered to make a warning shot. He didn't come at him full force. He does want to work with these people again. He's having a disagreement with them. But then the internet drama people spun this into he has rejected them, he hates them, he will not even mention them again. And yeah, the Duncan Egg blog post was about Duncan Egg, so he just briefly mentioned, oh, you know how reasonable I am about faithful adaptations, but he didn't need to mention House of the Dragon. The shocking thing about this new blog post is all those people who said he's not even gonna mention them again. He made a blog post complimenting the show for winning a Saturn Award. And that doesn't mean he's not fighting with them anymore. It just means he is a gentleman, in case you haven't noticed. And he never, I think there were NDA agreements against Benioff and Weiss, but he'd always politely, and you could tell he's being terse and polite in years past, saying congratulations that they won the Emmy for like something in season 6 or 7 or something. The later seasons weren't that good. But that's just the kind of person it's this odd mix of, he is this persnickety old man, but he does have a concept of, as a gentleman author, is it my place to, it's back and forth getting a read on him. But if he never, like, openly bashed Benioff and Weiss to the level the haters are saying, oh, he is feuding with Ryan Condal. If he didn't feud with Benioff and Weiss over the Sansa rape and TV Dorn, you think he'd feud with Condal to that extent, I'm saying? It's a matter of degree. That, yes, I think he is having some strong disagreements with Ryan Condal. I will say I do not think he has disowned him to the point he won't mention House of the Dragon again, even if there's things he's dissatisfied with. Of course, then the discussion about this blog post went back and forth that people pointed out. He never actually mentions Ryan Condal by name in it. And read it, it's a short blog post. I do want to acknowledge it. The point of this video is my mind has swung back and forth on a pendulum from this means things are cooling down, calming down, to agreeing with the people saying this is him intentionally omitting Ryan Condal by name and he is really bashing him. I really think there's too little context to know. And here's the key point. Fundamentally, I think it is entirely possible that he did not intentionally leave out mention of Ryan Condal by name from this blog post, and is still disagreeing with him. Like, we can't tell, was that a calculated removal of Ryan Condal's name from this just because his name wasn't attached to the award? It could have just been coincidence, and he could still be having a strong disagreement with him. So that could even be true, in which case there might not even be a correlation, even if he's still arguing with him. So we're not really proving anything from such a short blog post, other than the people saying he would never even mention House of the Dragon by name again as a show. No, he would mention, but again, in this same blog post, he actually, he talks about the history of the Saturn Awards. He mentions that, well, they started in 73, but Martin's had such an interesting life in the history of cons and awards shows because he's been a writer since the 70s. He said, I've only been to the Saturn Awards once before, in the early 90s when he was nominated for Beauty and the Beast, with Linda Hamilton and Ron Perlman. That's where he was a major experienced writer. I hate it when people went, oh, why are you criticizing Benioff and Weiss? What does Martin know about TV writing? He had more TV. He was an experienced TV writer by that point. From Beauty and the Beast and the Twilight Show revival in the 1980s. The point is, he mentions that Game of Thrones won 6 different Saturn Awards. A mix of show awards and actor awards, like Emilia Clarke, Maisie Williams, and Peter Dinklage won at one point or another. And he points out, no one has ever invited me to the Saturn Awards or told me when they were winning. And he's not just criticizing these current awards, and I wouldn't want George to travel. It's time that could be spent writing, and who knows if he could get COVID again. I would be annoyed if he went to the Saturn Awards this year. But he's talking about, like, in the 2010s, that he said we won 6 times from 2015 to 2019, and no one told me that there was an awards going on. I would have gone. So, fair enough, but that's an ongoing problem with HBO, not one set of writers, of why didn't anyone tell me I'd love going to Saturn Awards? That's just silly. Even at the end of this, he does have a brief thing going, congratulations to everyone who won, Maisie, Peter, Amelia, and David and Dan, Brian Cogman, and our directors Nutter, Taylor, and Sapochnik, because they won awards for it. And again, I can't tell if he intentionally left Condal's name. It falls just short of, I can tell when something is a blatant omission versus maybe it's just the way the sentence flowed earlier in the post. He might just not have gotten around to listing specific writer-directors for it's just the show won. It wasn't a writing award. That it would have been weird if it was for best script and he didn't mention Condal by name. Would have been weird. I can't get a read on it from something this brief, but again, he's such a gentleman that he wouldn't openly curse Benioff and Weiss even when he disagreed with them. Why did you think he will never mention House of the Dragon by name again? When whatever disagreements he has with them are not Game of Thrones Season 8 level problems, or Season 5 level problems. That why does, I guess is the point of the video, why does everything always have to be so black and white, and this is the polarization of the internet, where everything is either this is the worst thing ever, or it's the best. When did we stop having a measured response to things? That I said, like, I didn't hate Season 2. Oh, so you're praising it? No, I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. And it wasn't there were things they cut out I hope they address next season. I generally see a lot of people saying, like, if Season 1 was a 9.5 out of 10 because we wanted Lena and Harwin to do more, this was like a 7 out of 10, and it's a bit of a, jarring given how good the immediately preceding season was, but I watch reactor videos a lot. I'm going to start posting those to my community tab a lot more. That J20 restarted after a couple months. He was busy. He's in LA. He had to deal with the wildfires. A reactor a mashup channel for YouTube reactors has restarted, and I really like watching his, because there's only so many hours in a day, mashups of reactors watching Season 2, and while they complain, oh, this is a little bit of a boring episode 5, let's move on to the next, generally didn't hate it. And it's not the worst thing ever, that it always has to be those two extremes of 0 to 10. There's never a 7, So I like getting a feel for reactor channels who walked into it blind with no expectations and not hyped up for this is going to be a dragon battle every episode. I don't know, but even when Martin is disagreeing with someone, he's not openly feuding with and disowning them, that this is some sort of the internet feud, they're worse than gossiping schoolgirls, or no, they gotta be the worst thing ever, as opposed to, well, I had a polite disagreement with them. I don't know. He seems to have calmed down a bit, but that doesn't necessarily mean he'll be coming back to doing House of the Dragon things. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if they fixed any of the things he had, or if it's really more the studio than Condal. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I've been putting the cards up throughout the video to read off the actual thing. He praises House of the Dragon itself, took the home prize. It was up against some really great competition. And I said in a prior video, I thought the season as a whole didn't deserve an award. Lord of the Rings was a better season as a contained season. It had an ending, because the strike didn't affect it. but I felt that Emma Darcy and Matt Smith should have won acting awards. And the reverse happened, that we won Best Season, but Emma and Matt didn't win awards. But he remarks, and again, it's not just, oh, generically, by the way, one sentence, House of the Dragon won. He goes on to praise the performance of Emma and Matt, specifically in Season 2, as wow, those were really good. I remember even in his blog post about the butterflies, he'd take time to praise the performance of Fia Saban as Helena, or that he liked Emma and all these other things that were going on. But he goes, Matt and Emma did not win this year, parentheses, but they did outstanding work bringing Rhaenyra and Daemon to vivid life. So Martin's never going to 100% disown this project if he didn't for Game of Thrones, and he's still talking about it more than he did Game of Thrones Season 7. So, but after Season 5, he was barely talking about the show versus, well, there's things I'm disagreeing with. We don't know the true extent of what's going on behind the scenes. And I'd be overselling this to say, oh, everything's sunshine and rainbows, kumbaya, everyone's resolved behind the scenes. They had a disagreement. I don't know what it is, but he seems to have calmed down a bit. And it's futile for us to read into it from just the way this is so... There isn't enough context. We could read into and project any meaning we wanted onto these. But in 2 blog posts are better than 1, we now have 2 pieces of context for, is Martin trying to walk back? I was being a bit unreasonable. That Condal's making a change, but the studio's really pressuring him, and I understand why he did it as much as I don't like it. On a personal level. But for people saying he's privately feuding with Ryan and the show, I'm not sure how much is going on with that. So this isn't the end. This will be an ongoing thing of what are Martin's remarks about this. And I'm just a crazy person yelling at you. I am waiting for when Preston and Carmine themselves make a better put together video going over both of these blog posts now in context of what is going on with Martin behind the scenes. And no, he's willing to at least say, oh yeah, yay, House of the Dragon won a Saturn Award, and I hope that Emma and Matt win one in the future for bringing Rhaenyra and He isn't going, it's not my Rhaenyra, it's not my Daemon, why isn't Daemon being this dangerous guy, killing and everything, as opposed to having emotions and remorse over killing a cousin of his, or a great-nephew, or Rhaenyra, no, he's praising Emma and Matt. They deserve Emmy Awards for episode 2 alone, in isolation. That was amazing work. Which brings me full circle to the end, I guess. Why didn't we win so many awards? Now, obviously for the season as a whole, there were problems, but like an acting award, or the stunt award, or the costuming award. Shogun swept most of the awards. And there was heavy competition and other things like Dune Prophecy won Best Costumes, which was really nice. I've been following Costume Co. going over that, shout out. That they lost to 1 or 2 other things, and obviously Penguin won for Best Makeup Prosthetics instead of Aegon's burn injuries. And it's weird how some awards distinguish between a miniseries and a full series. So like in some things, Penguin wasn't competing against Shogun because one's a miniseries, one's a full series. At like the Makeup Effects Awards, Penguin beat House of the Dragon because they don't have distinct awards categories. So it's weird how it varies for those. We won Best Fantasy Series at the Saturn Awards for sci-fi because Shogun is a period drama. It's not a sci-fi or a fantasy. So it wasn't eligible. So it's weird how the categories worked. I've complained about that before, but looking ahead, while all of these awards in the awards season of January to February, these were the awards that go by calendar year, January 1st to December 31st. The Emmy Awards are weird because their annual cutoff is the end of May. Like, Season 2 came out right after that, so the upshot is House of the Dragon Season 2 is not going to compete against Shogun when the Emmy Awards are announced this coming July. So 5 months from now. I do not think season 2 will win for best season. I do not think it deserves to win for best season. But I'm talking about, like, screenwriting for episode 2. That was an amazing episode. Or acting awards specifically based on what happened in episode 2. And maybe some of the other ones. That is really good work. And I'd like to see some nominations, at least, at the upcoming Emmys in specific subcategories, particularly like cinematography. I'm the type of guy who's really invested. Why didn't the cinematographers win? They lost to Shogun. The SAG Awards, the only nomination we got was for Best Stunt Team, and we lost to, you guessed it, Shogun. So, I mean, at least like the stunt work or the cinematographers, or they deserve, in specific categories, I think they deserve some things at the Emmys. We'll see what happens. They at least got that Golden Globes nomination. It's weird how some awards shows completely shut out even House of the Dragon Season 1, but others it did better, and it always did better with the Globes and Emmys. We'll see what happens. But this is just the latest chapter in the ongoing saga of, it kind of seems like Martin is calming down a little, or at least he's not amping it up. Then again, because he's a gentleman. The bigger thing is this is a meta commentary on the people on. I'd like to think they've abandoned it by this point because they had their fun and left. The people who needed to take a dig at House of the Dragon, when alt-right YouTube channels are yelling about, oh, the Renaissance is bad, that's what ruined the show. There were actual, like, hard-right YouTube channels who I will not name saying that. And not a lot, just one. You can tell you're not on the right side if that's the type of, because they're not analyzing it. That isn't what the problem was. The problem was pacing due to the strike, that they over-focused on the core trio at a point in the story when they actually do very little, so they should have spread out to the other ones more. That other stuff that going, oh no, this is filling the liberal agenda, it has nothing to do with that. They were just taking a cheap shot at it to fulfill their thing, and now they've left because they needed to knock something down that was coming off the high of Season 1. So just as Season 1 rose from the ashes of Game of Thrones, I think Season 3 will bounce back because they have had time to balance it. They might cut out things I want, and I'll be disappointed in that. But I think it'll flow better as a TV season. And again, I watch reactor channels a lot because the only real measure is only a small fraction of us have either read the books or even the ones who speed read or read summaries for spoilers and then say, oh, I read it. No, you skimmed for major character deaths. You weren't actually a reader of this. You were the type of person who jumped ahead and went, Blood and Cheese will be the next Red Wedding. Battle of the Gull, it's going to be awesome. Like, you are a hype clickbaiter looking for things to talk about, character deaths. You can tell when it's really a structured criticism about, is this characterization right? And for people who weren't doing that the people watching it cold, who walked into Season 2 with no idea what it would be like, had some complaints about the pacing and stuff, and thought we should see the Starks more, because it seemed like we would, and it turns out a lot was cut. I mean, we knew Kragan was going to show up in the finale, and then he didn't, so we don't know what's happening with that. But when did we stop having measured responses to things? I mean, like Kathleen Kennedy just said she's stepping down from Lucasfilm, and I liked the video Eckhart's Ladder did on her, where he said she's not a saint and she's not the devil. She's presided over some projects I liked. I disagreed with her on a lot of points, but a lot of these failures were contributed to by multiple people. I mean, Kathleen Kennedy was just the head of Lucasfilm under Disney, and for all we know, we don't know what was going on behind the scenes. It could have been Disney was pressuring her into doing these other things, or Rian Johnson is the devil. Whose fault was it that they didn't have a planned out story arc for the sequel trilogy? Abrams, it's not that Johnson dropped something Abrams was planning very strictly. It's, you guys should have coordinated this better at every level. It isn't one person who is the devil. That 0 to 10 on that, of this black-white thinking of when do we get so polarized, versus a measured response of, I am going to be going through Season 2, but that's generally my thing of there's certain things they cut, they over-focused on certain characters, but I understand the source material is very thin. There are reasons this happened. Strike was, and oh, you keep bringing up the strike. It's like talking about Los Angeles right now without talking about there were just massive wildfires. you can't dismiss that as a factor. I do say season 3 will be make or break because, okay, there's no strike. Now what are you going to do? But there were so many other things going on with season 2 that I generally enjoyed it. And again, the things like the Stark should have been in more. Rhaena, for what they're trying to do with Rhaena, she physically needed more screen time if they wanted to do it well. Helena, I get the feeling they deleted scenes from that they will be doing, because I get the feeling they were gonna introduce Valyrian glass candles. A lot of people thought that was weird in the finale, the vision scene, but glass candles would explain that, and they really hinted like they're gonna do that in season 3. Let's see if that changes some minds, I don't know, but this is why I wish they'd actually release the damn deleted scenes to us. Like, eventually in the coming year, we're gonna get reports from the script archives at the WGA, like season 1. We found out various deleted scenes. Oh, I could see what they were trying to do with this. When did things get so polarized? Oh, Martin is agreeing with my criticisms about these woke women in this. No, he isn't. He is complaining about they cut certain characters I didn't want cut, and this was a warning shot, explicitly a warning shot he made, versus, I will never work with these people again. And now we have him going, oh, well, you know how reasonable I am about adaptations, and perhaps sarcastically, and hey, a blog post praising them for winning a Saturn award. That even Martin at his angriest, he's a gentleman who would never disown. You'd have to do something awful that even the Sansa just had him not talk about something. So, we don't know. This raises more questions than answers, but for the big thing is, if nothing else, the people who thought 100%, 0 to 10, Martin has disowned all of this. He's saying nice things in this. And some people are saying, oh, well, this is what the PR people told him to say. I acknowledge that's possible, but how could we ever prove that? That is why I'm stressing, I don't read into this too much, but he could have said nothing. You know, he had the option to say nothing. For Game of Thrones, he said nothing. So, we'll see what happens, and this is the ongoing saga of how does Martin feel a year later? Because he felt pretty bad about this time 12 months ago. See how he does now, and we've basically just been locked away with cabin fever all winter, with no news to go over in the aftermath of Season 2, versus, alright, these are things we're trying to do in Season 3, and that's just starting now. We got our first set spy photos of set construction started this week. Our first casting reports with Ormond Hightower. That will stop gnawing and devouring ourselves in the dark, as it were. In isolation. In solitary confinement. Over this stuff in Season 2 versus, okay, this is how Season 3 will try to address that. We will pick apart incoming casting announcements and spy photos. Let's see how they do.